Welcome to another installment of Cake and Conversations. I am your host, CiaraNirita. Let's get into the episode.
I'm writing the vision and making it plain. Don't think it's a game, and some of it just might be hard to obtain. I know it, but I don't care, cause I know deep in my brain. I'm destined for greatness, and I would not get it if I keep on playing. So let me go get.
Do you ever get to the point where you know you're supposed to be doing something, but you look for other people to validate you? Like, I was thinking the other day about how we hear from God, and instead of just moving on what God said, no matter what it is, we search for people to validate what God said. We seek out people basically to help us change what we already were told. For instance, Cake and Conversations. So this podcast, Cake and Conversations, this podcast is actually not the first thing that I did for Cake and Conversations. You know, after bringing it out of my living room, I actually was given a direction to do a panel discussion. So God had given me direction to, of what was the outline and how to do it. I just needed to kind of fill in the blanks of the logistics of the where, the when, and the who. But the what and the how, I had already had. Like, he had already given me that. However, instead of just filling in the blanks that I was supposed to fill in, the things that he wanted me to fill in, I searched for other people to validate it, to confirm what didn't really need to be confirmed. And as a result, as I started getting confused. Maybe not confused, but I got cluttered. I had too many people giving their input, and that input was really, it was on opposing sides. So I would have one person saying go left, one person saying go right, one person saying go straight, somebody else saying take a step back. And it created a bunch of noise for myself. So I put myself in a position of confusion. And we know that God does not operate, he does not deal in confusion. The Bible specifically tells us that he's not the author of confusion, which means that that confusion in turn comes from Satan. Like, confusion is of the devil. And being in a state of confusion, I had put myself in a space where I couldn't clearly hear what God was trying to tell me. And you know what? I mean, he probably wasn't even saying nothing because he had already told me. He had already told me what to do. So it's kind of like when you dealing with your kids and you tell them to do something and then they come back to you and you like, I already told you. Like, there's nothing more for me to say. I've already told you. But they trying to get more, and it's like, no, I already told you. So it could have been the very same situation. I was cluttered with all of the voices in my head, but he had already told me, so he probably wasn't talking. But even if he was, I couldn't hear it because of all of the noise. So my first Cake and Conversations event was a panel discussion. Like I said, it was about relationships. And with God, I knew that the event would be 6 panelists. I knew it would be free. I knew it would be about relationships. I hadn't quite figured out the who yet, so I didn't know who was going to be a part of the panel. But I knew that it was going to be an even number of men and women, and I knew that the panelists would come from a broad spectrum. I knew that the people, their backgrounds, their ages, life journeys, all of those things would be different. All of those people would fill different spaces. Now, when I started to tell people, and here came the opinions, both solicited and unsolicited. Like, people will give their opinions if you allow them the space. And the biggest question I got was, honestly, why is it free? Like, people didn't understand the amount of work, because it was a lot of work. I can't even deny it was a lot of work, but people didn't understand the amount of work and the time that went into this. And then I decided to just, ultimately it was decided to just give it away for free. Well, it was free because that's the direction that God had me go in. Like, it was supposed to be free. This is not to say that everything that I'm going to do is going to be free, or I'm just going to be out here just working my butt off and not getting paid for any of it. But this particular situation, this particular event, that's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a free event. And outsiders, although, many of them had really good intentions, they hadn't heard what I had already gotten. They didn't know what the vision was. They didn't know what the purpose behind it all was. All they knew was what they were seeing. And they were seeing me work. They were seeing me work a lot of late nights to do this free event. It was a really good event, and I could have, generated a decent amount of money, but that wasn't the plan. Like, that was never the plan. It wasn't a plan to create money off of this particular event. It was supposed to be free. And that's what mattered the most, sticking to the plan that God had created. So even though I allowed myself to be cluttered, even though I had these solicited and unsolicited opinions and concerns and all of these well-intended people around me, it didn't matter. Like, what mattered most was that I stuck to the plan that God had already given me. And so this was not to say that you don't need wise counsel, because those people have a place, but they don't take the place of what God has already given you. So, wise counsel is somebody, that person needs to be somebody who is praying for you, who is in tune with God, who's able to hear God's voice, and they're pretty much giving confirmation to what God has already said, or they're telling you, they're asking you, what did God say about this thing? Like, what is it that God told you to do? And they're leading you in a direction to always go back to God. That's what wise counsel is for. They should always either confirm or tell you or hold you accountable to whatever it is that God has already told you, what you've already heard. So when God gives us something, he doesn't really give it all to us, but he gives us enough to keep moving us forward, and we still rely on him. And the thing is, he wants us to rely on him. He wants us to make sure that we're always consulting him in the plan. I mean, think about it. Like, if you had all of the information that you needed to get wherever it is that you were trying to go, you knew the end goal, what would you do with it? Like, even if you came to a crossroads, you wouldn't even consult God. You would do things within your own strength. You would move pretty much as if you're making all of the decisions. And that's really counterproductive. So, we tend to forget, like, if God gave us everything and we get to a crossroads, and then now instead of going back to the source, you've forgotten everything that he has already given you. So you just kind of start to move in your own strength. And some things we just cannot do within ourselves. So, we have to constantly remind ourselves of the accomplishments that we've had. Write those things down. Allow yourself to remember where God has brought you from, so that as you move forward, and when things get rough, because they are going to get, when things get to the point where you just don't know which way to go, go back to the source, go back to where you originally got the plan from, and be like, okay, now what? Like, where am I supposed to go? Because you definitely will get to the next space. And also, it'll help you remember how far you've come, so you can keep pushing forward. And you know what? When we consult other people on things, we ultimately are saying, God, I don't really trust what you're telling me. Like, you telling me something, but instead of jumping right in and just moving, I'd rather test the waters to make sure that it's something that looks like it'll benefit me and make me better. Like, it's all about you. But the thing is, with God's plan, it doesn't always look like what we want it to. Actually, at times it could look like pain before pleasure. But I can guarantee you that every single time I've moved on God's word, I've never been let down. And every single time I've allowed others to influence what I've been given by God, it created kind of this web of confusion. And like I said earlier, God does not operate in confusion. So those things that we tend to like stray away and start to do in our own strength, it creates a mess, a tangled mess. And that, sometimes we got to untangle on our own, and it creates a curvy road that could have been straight. So, everything that we do, everything that's worth doing, anything that's worth having, it involves a risk. Every relationship, every decision, love, education, Christianity, like all of it, literally everything that's worth doing, it involves a certain level of risk. And the thing is, we have to obey God. We have to obey God through the fear, through the discomfort, through not knowing. We have to. And the thing is, we typically take our gripes to other people because we feel like things aren't necessarily happening in the time frame that we want them to, or we expect them to, or we feel like they should happen. And really, we need to take our expectations and timeframes off of God, like off of God's plan, because we don't know, what is on the other side of those plans. We don't know what are the things that need to happen along the way in order for those plans to come to fruition. Like, even if you know the end goal, you won't necessarily know the route. And even if you know some of the route, you won't necessarily know the end goal. And there's a purpose behind that. It's so that you can continuously and always, go back to the source and rely on him. And, when we do that, we have peace and we develop patience and contentment, not complacency. Like, it's a difference. To be content means that you're okay and you're happy in the space that you're in. But, you also have a desire to always grow and improve. Like, that's contentment. But if you don't, you're good. But complacency is more, has a more of a negative connotation to it. Like, you're really not working to improve anything. Like, when you're complacent, you here, you good, I ain't trying to get better. I ain't trying to do better. I'm just here. And so, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. The circumstances and complacency could be negative or positive, but you ain't moving. And that's where you are. So, when you look for others to validate things that God has already given you, you're looking for people to put their stamp of approval on God's plan that he didn't give them. You are basically giving them charge over, you're putting their opinions over whatever it is that God told you he wanted you to do. And unfortunately, like I said in the beginning, when I did my first King Conversations event, I allowed people to clutter. Now, ultimately, I wiped out the noise. I took a Selah, took a pause, and I cleared out the clutter. Took some time, and I actually got back to what I needed to be. I went back to the source. And so by clearing all of that out, by taking the moments that I needed to stop asking people and stop, relying on other people and just moving, by doing that, it ended up being a great event. Although it was a free event, I had a certain number that I wanted to hit, and I hit it. Like, I hit those numbers that I wanted to hit. And it was all because I stopped letting people dictate how I was moving, and I just started to move in God's plan. I started to just do the things that I was supposed to be doing. And I followed the plan that he gave me, and I filled in the blanks that were supposed to be filled in, and everything worked out. And even when I was filling in the blanks, once the clutter was cleared out and I was able to start moving again and I started filling in the blanks, he started giving me direction in those things as well. Like, he, certain people that were a part of this panel discussion, he gave those to me. Like, I had no idea who was going to be a part of this thing. But as I started to fill in the blanks, he started to fill in some blanks with me. So, if you allow God to take charge of the plan that he gave you, he'll help you along the way. He just wants you to rely on him. And, it's not really the plan will always happen. But, people are waiting on you to do what you're supposed to do in the plan so that they can ultimately get where they're supposed to be. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, we're all connected to this great plan, and all of us don't have the same knowledge of what our part is, but we have to make sure that the plan progresses. We have to make sure that we're not asking for validation from people who don't know. Like, how can someone else validate something that they were not given? They can give you their opinion, but typically those opinions, although potentially good intended, they don't necessarily work, or, they're not necessarily what it is that you really need. So don't allow other people to stamp stamp their approval on God's plan, not for your life. Allow the stamp of approval to be whatever it is that he told you it was, and allow yourself to just move whenever it is that he told you to move. Because the thing is, if you don't move, you only delay your own blessings, and you only delay what could have happened, the progress that you could have been making. So, push past the fear, push past the pain, push past the resistance. Once you push through those moments, then you get to the other side. It's nothing short of amazing. And you can always look back again, because you should be taking note of the progress along the way. So you will always be able to look back and see, like, wow. Like, there's been so many times in my life where I've had people literally be like, well, how did you? And I have no idea. Like, literally, I can say it's nothing but God, because there's nothing that happened that I can do in my own strength. Like, nothing that, if you looked at the numbers, if you looked at it in black and white, there was absolutely no way that it could have happened. But it did. And it was because I was committed to the plan that God gave me. It was because I was committed to, moving forward no matter what. It was because I was committed to hearing God's voice and hearing his word for me, and all of the things that I put myself into. That's not to say that I didn't make mistakes, because I made a whole lot of them. A whole lot of them along the way. But even with those mistakes, even with my missteps, he still was there. Like, he was still there to pick me up and push me forward. I feel like this turned into like a little bit of a preaching moment. Not intended at all, but really, ultimately, like I said in the beginning, don't ask for people to validate you. People don't need to validate you. And if you are enough within yourself to just move forward. And other people, we're all flawed. We all have our things. We all have our points where we may feel insecure about them. And that's okay. Like, there's strength in those things. There's strength in our insecurities. Like, the spaces that we didn't feel like would be our success points, those are the points where we actually probably have the most success. I say all the time, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a creative person. Those are the things that I consider my weak points. But, like, look at me. Like, this is a whole career. Like, I sit here and I do this, and I actually enjoy it. It's fun for me to have a thought and write it down and create a whole podcast episode about it. It's fun for me to have the direction to do a panel discussion and put the panel together and then watch it all come to fruition. Like, those things are fun for me. And even though I tell myself I'm not a creative, those like literally are creative things. Like, I can visualize the whole thing from start to finish. I can visualize what's going to happen, and I can move within it, and it's fun. So I can't allow other people's opinions of what I should be doing or shouldn't be doing, or what direction I should be going in or shouldn't be going in. I can't allow those things to change or dictate what it is that I'm actually supposed to be doing, because I know that what I'm doing is where I'm supposed to be, and I don't need the validation of others to help me determine that, because I already know it to be true. So hopefully this wasn't too preachy of an episode for you. Hopefully you got something from it. Hopefully, you look at the situations that you're going through and all of the circumstances and turn to your source, turn back to God and ask him what it is that he wanted. Like, even if you're on a road, you might not even be on the right one. Like, if you ask, you'll get it, but you also have to listen. Sometimes we ask and we don't necessarily listen to the answer, or we get an answer and it's not what we want to hear. So we still move how we want to move. So yeah, just keep pushing forward. We don't need validation from people, because people will not necessarily validate the right things. So again, hopefully this episode wasn't too preachy, and I hope that you all are enjoying your day, your evening, your morning, whenever it is that you are deciding to listen to this. And I will talk to you soon.